What did Tolkien's writing routine look like? Here we go. Tolkien wrote to a friend that he was stuck. He didn't know who Strider was. He didn't know where he was going, what was supposed to happen next. I think it's more like a philosophy, right? What didn't work for me was... Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Bri. If you're new here, I write books and I'm currently working on my first novel, which is a speculative archaeological thriller, but I also write like dark academia and fantasy. I've documented my NaNoWriMo failure on this channel, so feel free to check out those videos. Today, after some burnout, not really creative burnout as such, like life stuff, I've had 2 miscarriages this year and it's all been a lot. I felt like I needed something gentle and cozy and comforting and magical, and so what better writing routine to try out than J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the masterwork The Lord of the Rings himself. He also wrote The Hobbit, which was originally written for children, and The Silmarillion. I remember reading The Lord of the Rings, God, in year 4 I would have been, so what is that, like 7 or 8? It's like the cornerstone, isn't it, of the epic fantasy genre. His world building, his languages, the mythologies he created are unparalleled, and it's not only had an influence on fantasy literature but on pop culture. So I'm really excited to dive into this writing routine with you. I need some tea. It is the greyest, dreariest day, and I can only apologise for the dimness of most of this video and then this blinding spotlight that you've got right now. So J.R.R. Tolkien was a professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford University. He was a philologist. He wrote The Lord of the Rings, I believe, over 17 years. He created worlds and mythologies and languages and cultures with such depth that it took him this huge expanse of time. I understand that he was very meticulous in this world building, and so he was very much sort of akin to a plotter in that respect, but in terms of narrative, he was very much actually a pantser. There's an anecdote about when the hobbits meet Strider at the inn at Bree. I don't know how well you know The Lord of the Rings, but I'm assuming you do if you're watching this video. And Tolkien wrote to a friend that he was stuck. He didn't know who Strider was. He didn't know where he was going, what was supposed to happen next, who this character was going to turn out to be, and obviously who is Strider. He's none other than Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and the Lost King who centers Return of the King, the Lost King of Gondor. So it's comforting to know that even the greats got completely lost and didn't know what the hell they were doing, and some of the pantsing that we all inevitably go through at some point in our writing journeys happens to the best of them. So I find it really interesting that there's this sort of tension between the meticulousness of his plotting and sort of world building and creating languages, etc., and then the narrative, like drive and plot of the story in The Lord of the Rings. So it would be great to get into this writing routine and see how it can kind of maybe inform my creative process. I've read that he also spent some time like writing amid grandchildren and his children and things, and so that really appeals to me as a mum, because it's really hard to carve out like huge chunks of time to write by myself. Trying out something like Murakami's writing routine, which I can link in the description box, where he gets up at 4 a.m. That is not for me. Tolkien likes to write in the mornings, but they were much more like civilized early starts, I think. Like my kids will get me up somewhere between 6 and 7 as a rule, and I think that is a good time. So I'll stop rambling. Let's jump into the video. So let's get into who Tolkien was first of all. So he lived from 1892 to 1973. His full name, I didn't know this until doing this video, was John Ronald Reuel. Is that how you pronounce it? R-E-U-E-L. Tolkien. Interesting. He was a philologist, a professor of Anglo-Saxon, and of course an author, most famous for his works The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion. He wrote across genres fantasy and philology-inspired fiction, and fun fact, he genuinely created entire languages. So I don't know if you've like taken a dive into Elvish and like the actual grammar, but it is a fully constructed language, which is wild to me. And he created like such immersive, extensive, detailed histories for Middle-earth long before he actually wrote his novels. So what did Tolkien's writing routine look like? Here we go. So he was into morning writing. He wrote in the mornings, often before breakfast. He was all about the consistent practice, so small but regular writing sessions instead of intense marathon bursts. He was all about the research and study. He was completely immersed in languages, of course, as a professor of Anglo-Saxon and constructing his own languages as well. But he was really into myth and folklore and history. And it's often been said that actually in his work on The Lord of the Rings, he was essentially trying to construct the mythologies that he wished that we had for England, which I think is fascinating and really cool that his writing kind of grew out of these personal like little quirks and central preoccupations. He was about walks and reflection. So Tolkien would take daily walks to let ideas percolate. Love that, all about that. And environment matters. So he wrote in calm, distraction-free spaces, this says. However, I've also read that he wrote surrounded by grandchildren, so we'll be balancing doing me attempting to write with my kids around, see how that goes, and some sessions where I'm just sort of focused and more in the zone. He was about revising later, so focused on actually writing a draft and then looking at refinement and editing over time. So no editing as we go in this routine. And he was all about creativity through living. So he was combining his teaching, his family life, his hobbies. You know, he loved languages and folklore to inspire his stories and not just like hard graft all the time. So I'm going to try and incorporate a little bit of that with some cozy hobbies in this video too. So really looking forward to trying this out. I think this lends itself best to doing a bit over a weekend and then some on a Monday as well while school is in play, so that I can kind of get more of a feel for how this approach works, because it feels more like an approach than a routine. I understand he loves his tea, so we're going to get a pot of tea and see if I can kind of infuse some of this into my creative practice, and I will let you know what we learn. So Tolkien was supposedly about the long hand, and Tolkien for me conjures up, you know, it's the cozy imagery, isn't it? Like the Shire and the rolling hills and the hobbits' love of home and like snuggling up in their hobbit holes and cups of tea and buttered toast. And so I am gonna have a little writing sesh longhand in my sort of cozy book corner. I've got this notepad to work from, which I think feels a little bit Tolkien vibesy to me, and this is actually my daughter's. We bought it from Hampton Court Palace, but this kind of feels like it brings a little bit of the archaic. It's not actually like a quill, it's a biro. I think this will maybe help me get in the zone. I don't know what Tolkien ate for breakfast, but you can't go wrong with bagels, can you? I think the hobbits would approve. Since Tolkien was a professor of Anglo-Saxon, I should probably be reading Beowulf, but all of my old undergrad Anglo-Saxon stuff is in storage right now. So the best I could do was find the Poetic Edda. This was my undergrad copy. You can still see some tabs from my exam. This is Old Norse, so I guess not Tolkien's fave, but I shall do a little bit anyway to kind of get a vibe. This was part of my heroic age module, so that feels very like Tolkien-esque. And let's see what I've tabbed in here, shall we? Yeah, like this feels very like Tolkien-y, doesn't it? Gold she scattered, the gosling bright women, red gold rings she gave to the house servants. She let fate culminate in the shining metal flow. She did not care at all, that lady, about the temple stores. Unaware, Atli had drunk himself to exhaustion. He had no weapon. He did not defend himself from Gudrun. Often their sport was better when they lovingly would embrace each other frequently in front of the nobles. With a sword point, she gave the bed blood to drink. With a hand bent on death, she loosed the dogs. Hurled before the hall doors a flaming brand, wakening the house servants. That bride made them pay for her brothers. Cheating now because writing longhand doesn't work for me. Sorry. I know Tolkien would not be into the Apple Mac, but Apple Mac is where my creativity works best. can we just pretend that like the dark gloominess of this video is like an attempt to recreate the darkness of Mordor instead of the truth, which is my light has died and it's so grey outside and there is no decent lighting in this house. So if we're saying Tolkien made time for his hobbies, I thought it would be quite appropriate to make a bit of time for mine, and I've got a pattern for a hatching dragon that I know my girls will love, and I kind of want one too. So I'm going to crochet hatching dragons. Well, I'm going to make a start, and I'm just trying to choose whose idea. So the girls chose their yarn. I've got this glittery green and like a glittery gold that I was going to do for mine, but I'll show you what the girls chose and then I just need to pick what I'm going to start with. So my eldest opted for these two colours and then my youngest opted for these two. So yeah, and then I can't find my gold, but I was going to have green and gold. So that's kind of giving, I call it Smaug, but I think they call the dragon Smaug in The Hobbit, is that correct? So yeah, kind of, I feel like it's Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Tolkien vibes. It just depends which dragon I start with today. I have to say, if you're looking for a hobby that is like good alongside writing, crochet, I taught myself to crochet this year, and honestly it's such a game changer, because depending what you're doing obviously, but if you're doing projects that aren't too involved, you can kind of just switch off, let your hands do it. Like as a neurodivergent writer, I find that like it really helps kind of calm my slightly over the top overactive anxiety and all of that jazz. And yeah, like it's just really soothing. It's kind of like stimming productively. I find it's a way to like help me work through the knots of plotting and character, and just yeah, and it's a way to like be creative that's lower pressure as well, because like with writing it always feels so high stakes, like I want to do it well, I want to execute well, but with crochet like it's just a bit of fun and it doesn't matter. So it feels like a good writing adjacent hobby. I don't think Tolkien was a crocheter, but I'm not about to invent a language anytime soon. Maybe I'll do a bit of French study this afternoon, refresh my subjunctive or something, because Anglo-Saxon is definitely beyond me. But yeah, Tolkien made time for his hobbies, so let's do the same. Getting there with a little cute dragony head, bobble horns. These are the ears. So in a gesture to Tolkien's love of languages, it's not Anglo-Saxon admittedly, but I'm doing a bit of prep for teaching my daughter in French. So I do French with my 5 and 2-year-old on Fridays. We've just stopped formal French tuition because I think an hour is too long for them at such a young age after a full week of school. But my youngest goes to a French childminder a couple of days a week, so her French is pretty good. My eldest has forgotten some since she spent time with that childminder, so I figured, you know, this fulfills the Tolkien language requirement and will be good for the kids too. Okay, let's talk about what we have learned from Tolkien's writing routine. Now, what didn't work for me was writing with my kids around, especially like trying to do a Tolkien longhand. I'm not about that, but like sitting with my youngest and trying to keep her occupied, but trying to write. Anytime ideas like take off for me and I feel like I'm in the flow, she would then want something or talk to me, and that kind of imagining family life and writing together doesn't really work. I like having separated sessions, but the principle of it all needing to mesh together and sort of embracing the chaos of family life and just writing around it as and when works, that really resonated. And it was really nice to feel like it's possible that kind of messiness, rather than like a clean driven child-free approach like the Murakami routine that I tried, can also result in successfully finishing books, not only a book, but like a book as long and extensive as The Lord of the Rings. Writing longhand, as I said, not my cup of tea. I'm all about the laptop. Early morning writing sessions, there's no reason this couldn't work for me in theory, but the logistics of doing that with the kids on a school day is a challenge when I have to get them up and out. At the weekend it's more possible if we get some screen time going. I think like the daily walks and the rambling, and I've said before that movement I think is really useful to encourage reflection and just get the creative well refilled a bit. But also I think just this kind of like underlying philosophy of letting your interests and preoccupations, like he's, you know, really nerdily obsessed with languages and building them, and letting stories and things grow out from there. I read an amazing book on craft called How to Write a Million when I was a kid, actually, and it's 3 books combined together, and the one on plot by Anson Dibble, I believe it is, talks a lot about the Lord of the Rings, because obviously there's a lot to be said. But I think, I hope I'm not wrong about this, but I think in there's a little bit about world builders disease and how, you know, it's not an effective way to write. And actually what I think is really cool is how there's no right way. Perhaps if your only goal is to commercially publish quickly, Tolkien's process might be a bit long and elaborate, but I really love this idea of centering the things that you're into, being cozy and calm, and letting things grow gently and consistently over time rather than like bashing something out. I would like to finish something sooner than in 17 years, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a time and a place for like everybody's different methods. And something about the kind of romance and academic kind of musty books and studies and cups of tea, like all of those vibes, I really love this. I like Tolkien's revision later approach. That really works for me. If I try to edit as I go, I'll just painstakingly go over the same thing and never progress. I have embraced the concept of a discovery draft and writing something terrible, so I have a pile of crap essentially, where hopefully there are a few gems in there, but basically that's my raw material with which I want to craft something good later. But that editing and that refinement will come down the line, and so that really worked for me about this routine. His research and study thing, I love this phase of writing a novel and researching and reading about myths and culture actually to inform my speculative archaeological thriller has been really fun. And I've got some like fantasy and dark academia stuff I want to write down the line too, and researching like quantum physics and various things, working out how I want to build the magic system. I love all of that stuff. I think people criticize how long Tolkien spent in that process, I think sometimes, and I love it, and I think it should be savoured and soaked up, and like, you do you. I guess there's a danger though, isn't there, of getting lost in that process and never making enough progress. And so I guess it's just like the caution that maybe do that, but also try to drive something forward. So those are my key takeaways. Is it a routine that will work for me in general? I think it's more like a philosophy, right? It's like a way of living and being creative and letting the things that you love percolate and like just infuse your writing. And I love that. I think it's awesome. I think if you're a Tolkien fan, this is a really fun one to try. So if you would like to attempt a new approach, it's not even like a strict routine. So you definitely can't go wrong with this. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy author routines, you might also like to see Haruki Murakami's writing routine, which I tried, and that has 4 a.m. starts and marathons and all kinds of bits and pieces. So the complete antithesis of what we've done in this video. As ever, thanks for sticking around, and I'm really excited to share some updates soon now that I have officially applied for my writing course. So everything crossed, fingers and toes, and I will catch you in the next one.